Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, we're talking about a team that I actually haven't talked about in a while, which is a little surprising because they made a pretty big move following the NBA draft, and it is the Los Angeles Clippers. And the reason why we're talking about them is both because of that Luke Kennard trade that they made where they gave up Landry Shamet and brought back Luke Kennard, and also because they just signed Serge Ibaka to be part of their center rotation moving forward alongside Ivica Zubac. So, before we get even more into this topic, I want to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. I've been appreciating all the support that you've been giving me lately, and I hope to see that continue. Without further ado, let's talk about the Clippers. Now, obviously, Serge Ibaka is a really household name, so I think a lot of people are surprised to see that he only got signed for the mid-level exception. He has a 2-year deal at the mid-level where I'm pretty sure he got a player option for the second year. But Serge is still great on the offensive end of the floor. He's a terrific shooter. He's a good screen setter. But on the defensive end, he's fallen off of his prime years. He's still a solid rim protector, but he can't quite switch off and guard as many players on the perimeter as he used to be able to, and that's really what made him such a great defensive player. He is really mostly a full-time 5 now, so he doesn't have the same positional versatility that he used to have. He used to be able to play a lot of the 4 while also being able to step out and play as a stretch 5 as well. So, that also takes away a bit of his value. In addition, I actually had him pegged for worth being a bit less than the mid-level. I thought that if I were a team, I wouldn't quite be willing to give him the mid-level unless I was really focused on competing this season, because he had a pretty poor on-off effect on the Raptors, which, as I talked about before when I was talking about Jeremy Grant, I think is a really good indicator of how good of a player you really are. Now, obviously, individual plus-minus for a game-to-game basis is not super indicative of how good a particular player is, because a lot of success in the NBA is based off of lineups. And if you have a guy who's in a lineup where he doesn't really fit, or he's the only good player out there, then it's going to hurt his plus-minus. But if you have a guy out there who could be a scrub and he's playing alongside 4 all-stars, well, then his plus-minus is going to look pretty stinking good. So while that does come into effect for an individual game, I like to look at how the team's net rating is with a player on the court versus how they are off the court for an entire season. It's right there on Basketball Reference. If you type in Serge Ibaka, you can scroll down. I believe it's under play or something like that. Play-by-play maybe, and it lists the team's net rating for the whole season as well as the player's net rating for when he was in the game alone. And Serge Ibaka overall had a negative impact on the Raptors. They played better with him off the court than they did with him on the court, and it was actually by a pretty significant amount. So that does make me question how good of a player he actually is. I still think that he's worth somewhere in the $5 to $10 million range annually, but I don't think he would have been worth getting overpaid. I don't think he was worth 12 to 15. I even heard some people saying they thought Serge Ibaka was going to get $18 million annually, but that was never going to happen. This sort of deal is much more where his value was, and I think the Spurs actually the Clippers did a nice job in bringing Serge in. He fits a need for them. It's a position they needed to upgrade at, especially after Montrezl Harrell left. I think that this is a significant upgrade over Harrell as your backup 5-man, because Ibaka can replicate some of the inside scoring stuff that Harrell does so well. He's also a better defensive player, much better, as he's a good rim protector. Harrell, if you're a big man in the NBA, you need to be able to do one of 2 things on the defensive end of the floor. 1, you need to be able to guard on the perimeter and keep perimeter players in front of you. And 2, you need to be able to rim protect. If you can do both of those, you're an outstanding player and you're in consideration for Defensive Player of the Year, aka like Rudy Gobert type guys. If you can do one of the two, then you have a chance to be a really nice fit into a systemic defensive team. Brook Lopez on the Bucks is absolutely perfect because he plays the drop coverage as well as any other player in the NBA because of his ability as a rim protector. Daniel Tice is a great fit for the Celtics because he can slide his feet, he can guard on the perimeter, and he is very versatile defensively, can guard multiple positions, and that makes him a perfect fit with the Celtics because on the defensive end of the floor, they play a very switch-heavy system. So, for that reason, certain players work better with certain teams. But here's the thing with Montrezl Harrell. He's like 6'8", so he's not a good rim protector. He's not particularly laterally quick, so he can't really guard on the perimeter. So he goes 0 for 2 in the defensive check marks for an NBA center. Now on offense, he's terrific. He brings so much energy. He's a great finisher at the rim. He has started to develop an ability to be a playmaker out of the post, and that's where his viability and value comes as an NBA center. He's also a terrific rebounder despite being short because he's a really good athlete, and that allows him to out-hustle people and make the kind of plays that he needs to be a good rebounder. However, the defensive stuff is very important, especially in a league like the Western Conference, where you have to guard centers like Anthony Davis, like Nikola Jokic. Those are the big two, but even like Jusuf Nurkic, Jonas Valanciunas, there are good offensive big men in the Western Conference, and Montrezl Harrell just couldn't get it done guarding those type of guys. Even Kristaps Porzingis, like, there are difficult matchups for centers, and Harrell wasn't getting it done. Ibaka can step up and improve that defensive center ability. He can guard a little bit on the perimeter. He's not going to go step out there and switch onto James Harden for you, but he can guard some wings, and that is going to allow him to have some versatility on the defensive end of the floor. But really where he's better is as a rim protector, and that is more what the Clippers system is. They run a lot of drop coverage because that's what Ivica Zubac is good at, the other center that they have. So Ibaka is a big upgrade for them on the defensive end of the floor, but what about on offense? The big advantage Ibaka has over Montrezl Harrell is that Serge Ibaka shot the three-point shot at 38.5% this past season. Now that is an above average mark. It's a significantly above average mark for a center. He shoots them at a high rate as well. It's not like he's doing this on one three-point shot per game. He's putting up multiple threes per game, and he shoots them very well. He's great in the pick and pop, and I would not be surprised to see him establish some really nice pick and roll, pick and pop type chemistry with whether it's Lou Williams or Luke Kennard, somebody like that. I could see that being excellent for him, and I think that on offense, he's also a very good fit for them. He doesn't quite have the same pick and roll ability. He's not the same leaper as Montrezl Harrell is, but he can still finish at the rim. Overall, I think this is a big upgrade for the Clippers over Montrezl Harrell, and I like the Serge Ibaka signing. The other big acquisition that they made was the Luke Kennard trade. You gave up Landry Shamet, who's a good player. He actually played well for them in the playoffs last year, seemed to demonstrate a nice feel for the game. Not a super athlete on defense, but he played well and got himself in the right positioning there. Worked really hard on whoever he was matched up against. Usually it was like Gary Harris or Torrey Craig, so not that big of a deal. But on offense, he also just was knocking down three-pointers. He doesn't do much off the dribble at all. He doesn't have any sort of creation abilities at this point, and he's not much of a playmaker. So that's where he really needs to improve if he wants to become a legit starter in an NBA system. But he wasn't quite ready to be that on-ball type of guy that the Clippers probably needed a little bit once we saw Paul George and Kawhi Leonard start to struggle. Luke Kennard can be that for you. Now, obviously, this is a huge risk for the Clippers because Luke Kennard is injury prone, and if he can't stay healthy, availability is the best ability, and if he can't stay on the court, that is a huge hit to this team because you gave up a rotation player for a guy that you can't rely upon to be out there for you. But if he does stay healthy, he's a significant improvement in the shot creation and playmaking game over Landry Shamet, and he can shoot the 3 ball at a pretty similar level to Shamet as well. He also plays defense at the same type of smart, heady play, makes the right decisions, good at rotationing on off of the ball defense. Not much on the ball, but you're hopeful that you can hide him on one of the worst offensive players and least threatening offensive players on the opposing team. So overall, I think that was a good deal for them. I'm excited to see Luke Kennard with the second unit because I would definitely assume he won't start at the point guard, or I guess the other alternative would be to bench Marcus Morris and move Kawhi to the 4 and PG to 3. So that probably will not be happening. So we'll be seeing Luke Kennard come off the bench. That's going to be a good bench unit. Lou Williams and Luke Kennard combined are very, very good scoring guards, and I think that that's going to really ramp up this team and allow them to have a very good attack from that second unit. Serge Ibaka, like I said, is a good offensive big man, and he will create some really nice chemistry with those two. I think that second unit is going to be very deadly, and I'm excited to see it in action. On the defensive end of the floor, there's a bit more questions, but as long as you have one of the two wings in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard on the court with those three at a time, you should be okay due to the on-ball prowess that those two have as two of the better on-ball wing defenders in the entire NBA. So overall, I think that this Clippers team has very much upgraded their roster in this offseason. I wouldn't call them the championship favorite because the Lakers have also upgraded by adding Dennis Schroeder, and the Bucks have upgraded in their Drew Holiday acquisition, as well as the 76ers have completely rebuilt their roster. But similar to last season, those are the teams I view as the top 4, with the Nuggets and the Celtics and the Nets lurking in the next group. But I think that the Clippers are certainly one of the 4 teams that are most likely to win the title next year, and I'm very much excited to see what this group looks like on the court. They still need to add some wing help because at the moment the only players that I really view as wings on this team are Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and maybe Terrence Mann, but Terrence Mann has no offensive game, so he's not going to be able to get run time in the playoffs. So they need to add some more wing help, but if they can do that, there's a chance that we see a significantly upgrade Clippers team next year and a team that can really, really make a run at an NBA title. Last thing, the Marcus Morris extension, people are making a big deal about it. They didn't have an option. I get that they overpaid for him, but this was their only choice. They had to make sure they kept Marcus Morris on the roster. He was their 5th best player last season, maybe even their 4th best player last season, maybe even their 3rd best player last season. He was very important to their success, and keeping him around to be another scoring option who works hard on the defensive end of the floor was an important move for this team. I get that they overpaid, but they had no way of replacing him because they're over the cap, and there was no other player that they had bird rights on that they could have kept around, so they needed to lock in on Marcus Morris and make sure that he remained on the team. So they overpaid for him, which you don't love, but it was a move that they absolutely had to make, and I can't fault them for that reason. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Leave a like and subscribe if you did. Let me know in the comments section what you think about the Clippers moves. Do you think that they should have tried to hang on to Montrezl Harrell instead of signing Serge Ibaka? Do you think that this is a downgrade at the center position for them? How do you feel about the Luke Kennard trade? Do you feel the same way I do about it? To recap that whole thing, I think that this is a big risk for them because he's injury prone and he's due for a contract extension 1 year earlier than Landry Shamet is. So there's a chance that you're going to have to pay this guy soon. But I do think that it's a better player that they brought in, and getting the best player in a trade is always a good thing. So they also did get four second-round picks to do the deal. So I think the Clippers won that trade, and I'm a big fan of what they've done this offseason. I think I've covered everything now. That's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.